Celtics Beat is powered by Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to a new edition of Celtics Beat here on the CLNS Media Network. Adam Kaufman and Valenti, we are always here. There has been some Celtics news since that parade, which of course happened just after we were on last time. I was there, brought the kids. It was a fun time, except for a jerk in the front row that wouldn't move aside and give my kids any space to stand there, because heaven forbid a dude who's in like his 60s can't get front row, put little 4-foot kids in front of him. He has to keep moving over and stepping on their toes, even yelling at my kid and make him cry. I'm still a little salty about this. But other than that, the parade was a nice time, and Lord knows Sam Hauser had a great time just puking all over the duck boat, and I guess you get paid for that because he's got a couple $1,000,000 more in his pocket after Boston picked up his option. He is extension eligible as well. We can get to that. Kristaps Porzingis, you may not see him again until 2025 after he had surgery to repair his leg. He is going to miss 5 to 6 months. Best case scenario, he's probably back around November, and don't be at all shocked if that thing drags out into Christmas time, January, something like that. So all things that we will touch on a little bit later on as we celebrate the champion Celtics and all the wannabes behind them, including the New York the Knicks, the Knickerbockers, who went out and, of course, acquired Mikal Bridges from the Crosstown Nets, gave up, 35 first-round picks. They're going all Danny Ainge right there in Brooklyn in the reverse, trying to get all the picks back that they once lost that turned into a Boston championship. So, again, much of that to come. But NBA draft. Got a couple of guys that have joined the team. Second rounder, and was it Anton Watson out of Gonzaga. But more to the point, maybe he'll play. We'll see. More to the point, though, is Baylor Scheierman out of Creighton, who was the very last pick of the opening round. And will he play? And what is he going to look like? What can we tell you about him? Look, I'm not a huge draft guy. Ev is more into it than I am, but I wanted to make sure that we could fully educate the audience, and that is why this man fills a lot of needs, actually, to this specific show. Matt Perrault is here with us. He hosts the Bostonian versus the Book. He is part of Sports Grid, Daily Juice. He's all over the place. He's also a Massachusetts native. I don't know if he still considers himself technically a Celtics fan. I think you do, right, Matt? I mean, I saw you lighting up a cigar after Celtics wins on Instagram. So you're still in the spirit of things, but you are here in large part because you know probably more about Creighton basketball than anybody that I have ever met who hasn't, played for the team or coached the team. So if anybody can break down Baylor Scheierman and what he brings to Boston, it is certainly you. So first and foremost, welcome to the show. It's great to have you.
Thank you. Appreciate the invite.
So I, again, I enjoyed watching Creighton play, but just in a very sort of casual way, bet on them occasionally, made some money on them occasionally, but I am not someone that could break down Creighton athletics, and I would not fool the audience into believing that I am. I can tell you a little bit about Scheierman just based on what I've read, but I can't, it's as far as watching him, it's highlight reels like probably any other Celtics fan since he's been drafted. No one's going back and breaking down game film, but you have probably seen most, if not every game of this kid's career, and he has been obviously around for a while. He's only a couple of years younger than Jason Tatum, for that matter. So he's, been playing college ball for a while, comes into the NBA now. And that's sort of I think the appropriate place to begin, because my first instinct when I saw the pick, and it could have been anyone, this is not a knock on Scheierman, was 30th overall pick, see in Maine kid, have a good time. But with no Porzingis for an extended period of time, this kid being about as NBA ready in the eyes of many as just about anyone else taken in the first round. Doesn't mean he's a top prospect or anything like that, but he's seasoned. He's a good shooter. He fits the mold in terms of what Celtics basketball, Missoula ball is all about at this point in time. Do you see him actually getting legitimate run, maybe being a rotation player for this team?
Yeah, I do. I mean, look, I started covering Creighton basketball in 2004. That was 20 years ago. And I was just fortunate I moved there. I was doing afternoon drive radio in Omaha for 5 years and started doing pre and post game for the Creighton Blue Jays before, moving on to covering the Jays for Rivals. And so I did a ton of recruiting stuff. I live in Vegas now, but that's what brought me to Vegas, was to cover all the big AAU conferences, all the big AAU tournaments here in Vegas. And so I've seen this change in college sports through the eyes of the Creighton basketball program. And it's really indicative as to what everyone has done, because Coach Greg McDermott was at Iowa State. He was at Northern Iowa before that. He ran a football style playbook. He had hundreds and hundreds of plays. And then he saw the game changing, and he saw his son, Doug, and how he could build a program dedicated to the 3-point line, and using the 3-point line as not just an analytical weapon, but an actual weapon to go and recruit kids to come in and shoot a ton of threes, go up tempo, get guards and get forwards who, like Doug, who wound up his senior year being the Naismith Player of the Year, and the Jays went into the Big East Conference and went all the way to the Big East Final and lost to Providence that year. But Coach McDermott has really looked to build a program that looks a lot like Joe Mazzulla types of offense. Shoot threes, go up tempo, use your bigs from behind the arc. And Baylor Scheierman was a kid who was really a football prospect in Western Nebraska, in Aurora, Nebraska, which is the middle of nowhere. He was a kid that was lightly recruited, goes to South Dakota State, becomes the Summit League Player of the Year. And really, it was the start of the NIL, the name, image, and likeness world, where you could shop yourself. And the Creighton Blue Jays are in Omaha, which is, people don't really know this, but that's the home of Berkshire Hathaway. It's the home of Warren Buffett. It's the home of one of those highest per capita millionaires cities in the entire country. They've got money. So they were able to win the Baylor Scheierman sweepstakes and keep him away from Iowa State and Iowa and Nebraska. And he went to Creighton. He plays a year. He tests the waters with the NBA, and the scouts come back and say, you're probably a late second round pick. And, we like you, but we don't really know if you could play at this level. He goes back to Creighton. He dedicates himself. He works his tail off. He gets bigger. He gets stronger. He gets more accurate from behind the 3-point line and becomes a better defender. Look, this kid's not going to defend anybody in the NBA that makes you go, oh, wow. But if you see how Sam Hauser has worked on his game defensively and came in and was able to guard Luka during the finals, I think that's the blueprint for this kid. Get him in. Let's see what he can do. And you're right, with Porzingis' injury and how long he may be out for, he's a left-handed 6'7" shooter. He's a little bit of an anomaly. It's going to be weird as he comes off screens. He'll come off screens the other way versus a right-handed shot. So he's a guy that I think gives Joe Mazzulla some wrinkles to throw into the offense, and he can rebound. He's 6'7". He's not afraid to go and body somebody up. He's not a small player. Sure, defensively, laterally, he's not that quick. But if he's a spot-up shooter and a guy that just stands in the corner and buries threes for the offense, I absolutely could see him getting playing time, in particular early in the season.
Yeah, it feels like to me, when it comes down to the way they want to build this team, I think it's a lot of everybody kind of getting on the same page. Brad, Joe, how many ranges, Mike's there, and everybody in there, kind of the same idea. What we want to do is we want to spread the floor as much as possible to make driving lanes easier for Jalen, for Jason, for Drew, or whoever. And the thing that I think Baylor is going to have when he comes in is the green light from Mazzulla to shoot any shot that you feel is a good one. I think they trust him because this is a guy, and you'll attest to this, Matt, a little bit more than we can, a guy that's capable of running an offense. But, hey, buddy, your job right now, staying over there, shoot in the corner, shoot the open ones, and bury the open ones. That's how you get yourself some more playing time. But as you'll probably attest to, he's not just a shooter, right?
No, he can rebound. I mean, again, he could do everything you want with the basketball on in his hands. He can drive, he can post up. He's got an all-around offensive game that is NBA ready, and he's a really hard worker. I think one of the best things about Baylor Scheierman is that he takes coaching really well. He's a very confident kid. He believes in himself, but he comes from that football mentality where contact doesn't bother him. If he needs to go into the lane and body somebody up, he will. If he gets hit going to the rim, that's not going to bother him at all. And being a lefty, again, creates some differences for him with other players. It's only on the defensive side of the basketball that you really got to go, okay, you got to improve that dramatically if you're going to play significant minutes. But I don't think he's going to come in to play significant minutes. I think he'll be a guy that will get spot opportunities to come in. And I do think as the year progresses, if an injury happens to Hauser, injury happens to Pritchard, something along those lines, where the role players, he'll get chances to go out there and play, and they'll live with the defensive liability. They'll live with him. They'll hide him in some ways. They'll give him help. They'll do things so he's not exposed defensively. But he'll work on that as he goes. And being 23, okay, he's not young. He's not a puppy. He takes coaching really, really well, though. And as the draft progressed, I thought he was going to go to Minnesota because it looked like that was a really good fit to them. Then I thought Denver was going to take him. And I'm sitting there going, is Brad going to take him at 30? Because I couldn't see Baylor falling out of the first round, just given his 3-point prowess and being a lefty 3-point shooter. I was like, this is what the NBA is built for right now. You saw Dalton Knecht go to the Lakers at 17. Dalton Knecht's a better player than Baylor Scheierman. I don't know if Dalton Knecht's a better player in the NBA than Baylor Scheierman's going to be, because they're both going to do very similar things when it comes to shooting the three. So I loved this fit when I was like, man, Brad, just do this, take this kid. And then they took him. And I was texting with Coach McDermott after the game, after the pick, and he was in the room when the call came. He's the one that got the call from the Celtics that said, hey, we're going to take Baylor. I go, can you talk about a better fit? He goes, this is absolutely the dream spot. This is perfect. So they're ecstatic to be with the Boston Celtics, and they're coming in to work hard.
Looking at just this roster right now, makeup, and obviously there are changes that could be made. Free agency is right around the corner, begins on Sunday. They could make some minor trades, but generally speaking, we know what Boston is going to look like. They're running back the core as they should, defending champs, championship favorites for next year, all of that. So you have, in no particular order, Tatum, Brown, Holiday, White, Porzingis, Horford, Pritchard. Okay, so that's what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's 7 guys right there. Let's throw Hauser in and call it 8. Porzingis is going to miss time, bring it back down to 7. After that, I mean, is there anyone that you could make a legitimate case for being ahead of a guy like Scheierman in the rotation? Like he should, and I don't know that all of these guys are going to be there, but just to throw out names of guys who have contracts, you could put him, and they're not all the same position either, but you could put him ahead of, Walsh, Tillman, Springer, Cornette if he's even back, Svi, Kada, like all of these guys. I mean, Scheierman could get a look before all of them.
Because he does the one thing that Joe wants, right? Shoot the three really well. And this is going to be the spacing of the court that you need, that he offers to a team that is, built behind the 3-point line and getting, as you mentioned, the lanes for Jalen and Jason to get to the rim. And so, yes, I think they've drafted him to play. It's a first-round pick, so it's a guaranteed contract. So they're bringing him in. They're committing financially to him to be a part of this roster for at least a couple of years. And so I think that gives the team some added incentive to play him and say, okay, let's see what he can do and let's see what he's capable of. And look, it just comes down to just, it's 82 games. Injuries are going to happen. If he's the backup for Hauser or the backup for Pritchard in some form like that, when those guys who, it's basketball, they're going to get nicked up, they're going to get banged up, they're going to have a night off, whatever it might be. Those are the games I think you're going to see Baylor Scheierman out there playing for Boston. And I think it fits directly as to what the team wants to do. And culturally, this is a great fit. I mean, Doug McDermott went to the Indiana Pacers this year, but he's been in the league now for 10 years. I had his dad, I had Greg on my show, The Bostonian versus the Book, and Doug popped a bottle of champagne and Greg was like, what's going on? He's like, I just made my 10 year. I have pension. Like, this is a kid who was not recruited. Harrison Barnes was on his high school team. Harrison Barnes, who went on to a great career at North Carolina and a great career in the NBA. Everyone was recruiting Harrison Barnes. They weren't recruiting Doug. They overlooked him entirely. And Doug wound up going and becoming the Naismith Player of the Year, like I mentioned, and going off to have a 10-year career in the NBA. I really believe Baylor Scheierman is going to follow in a very similar situation. He's never going to be a starter. He's never going to be a superstar. He's never going to be a player that you're like, oh my gosh, you got to stop Baylor Scheierman. But he's going to be a solid NBA player that will fit a role for a team. Anthony Tolliver, Kyle Korver, players that have come out of Creighton who have done exactly this, from behind the 3-point line, being big shooters, over 6'6" forward type shooters who can knock down open threes consistently enough to keep themselves in the league for a very long time. So I think it was a very smart pick by Boston. I think it's a great fit for Baylor Scheierman to be with the Celtics.
Game Time is the authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. So it's really easy. Just download the Game Time app. Okay, now to me right now, the Red Sox are the ticket you want. So go to a Red Sox game. There's nothing better than going to Fenway Park or going to a baseball game, period. So what you do is you download the Game Time app, create an account, use code CLNS for $20 off of your first purchase. Again, redeem the code CLNS for $20 off. Terms apply. Create an account and redeem the code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
So Chris Forsberg tweeted out a little while ago, and others have been talking about this, that Sam Hauser, I mentioned, the team picked up his option, a couple $1 million, no surprise there. He's extension eligible. So Forsberg writes he's eligible for roughly 4 years, $78 million. Sides will have plenty of times to negotiate starting next month. Low money team option, take some stress off finances this year. Risk is exposing him to unrestricted free agency next summer. But we've talked about him in relation to Scheierman now multiple times. It's easy to make a comp in that, guy with decent size, not special defensively, shoots really well, white. I think obviously Scheierman's the better rebounder between the two. And I don't think that can be overlooked. You already talked about that strength, but 9-10 rebounds a game in college, at least last year, I think that's really significant. But if in fact the team decides they don't want to commit $80 million to Sam Hauser, do you think that this is does Scheierman fit? Are they sort of what's the term people always used to describe the Jays with, that they redundant? Are they redundant enough in theory to where if Hauser leaves, you have Scheierman, no big deal?
I think there's a case to be made for that, but I think that the shots that Hauser made in the finals, I think the play he had defensively, I think I would be hesitant to say that Baylor Scheierman should take the job of Sam Hauser. I mean, look, I made a lot of money on Hauser, so I'm a bit biased. I loved him over 1.5 threes in the finals. It just kept on cashing, and the books kept on keeping it at 1.5, and it kept on coming in with him hitting 2, 3, 4 threes, depending on the game. So I don't want to say that, like, if Sam Hauser were to walk, that Baylor Scheierman could step in and hit the same shot that Hauser made last year. But I do think eventually, yes, I do think that there might be something of a trade piece where you could keep Hauser for this year, keep it cost effective, extend him, and then down the road, if Scheierman shows to be the guy at a cheaper price to take the similar position and take the same shots, you then could move Sam Hauser and trade him for something in the future. So I think what Brad's doing is, I think that they're doing a very interesting redundancy is not the right word, but I think it's just sort of stacking the cards that if things play out the way they play out, that they have guys that fit this core, it fits this roster as to how they want to play. Because look, the numbers are the numbers. They were unbelievable on both sides of the basketball all season long. They were the best team in the NBA. They're one of the best NBA teams that we've seen for a single season in a long time. So there's nothing to fix. So let's just make sure that we've got some stopgaps if things don't go the way we want or injuries happen, that we can keep on playing the way we want to play.
Were you surprised, considering how much of a big deal shooting is? It's like pitching in baseball. You can never have enough pitching. You can never have enough shooting. Were you surprised that it took to 30 for him to come off the board, considering, like, Adam, we've been texting around some of these weird numbers, half of them that you don't even understand what they mean. I sort of agree with you. Sometimes I'm like, I don't know what this means, but I like the fact
some of these analytics are stupid. Like, I'm sorry, I don't even understand the abbreviations. That, never mind what they stand for. What was the one you sent the other day? It was like in the 99th percentile of SLL or so. Like, I
think it's shot quality points per play, but I don't, or points per possession.
I don't even know what that means when you spell it out.
Yeah, so I think that's what that. But the idea being, like, and the one thing I love about Scheierman is he's not just a shooter; he's a movement shooter, which is a different being entirely. Like, yes, he can stand there and shoot the open ones if he's set and square to the basket. That's a skill. I'm not denying that. I think one of the biggest skills of Scheierman is the fact that he can come off a screen in movement and get square in the air and still have good balance and all the stuff that you need. You think about it, like you mentioned, Kyle Korver is a great example. JJ Redick, and now coach JJ Redick, is another great example of a guy who's, and Hauser, a great movement. Yep. That's why I was a little shocked and I didn't do a ton of prep because I was too busy watching the Celtics win an NBA championship instead of getting ready for the draft. I'll take the trade-off. But as I was doing my research, I'm going through and I'm looking at his profile and I'm like, okay, all these things to me scream Missoula ball. Let's throw on the tape. And I threw the tape and I'm like, this guy's awesome. I tweeted out very quickly, like, I think it was the morning of the first round of the draft, like Wednesday morning, maybe Tuesday. I was like, this guy, I don't know a lot about this draft, but I really like this guy. And the fact that he was available at 30, I'm like, I can't believe what I'm watching here. Like, he has a definitive role in this league. And he does one thing that I think a lot of people are looking for. In in the case of like Duncan Robinson, gets you paid in the NBA. I could not believe he lasts all the way to 30. What was your impression of that?
No, I'm with you. I was surprised that he got through the 20s. I thought that was the perfect spot for him, 25, 26, 27, somewhere in that range, and someone was going to jump up and grab him. And then he kept on sliding and kept on dropping. And I was like, my goodness, I was like, I don't know if he gets to Boston, but if he gets to Boston, this is going to be the perfect pick for the Celtics to jump into. And I also think just culturally for him to go in there and being a guy who played for Greg McDermott, who played in the Big East, he's played in MSG before, he's played all over the East Coast in Philadelphia. Like, he's from Nebraska, but he spent all the time on the road on the East Coast playing in the Big East. So this is not going to be like culture shock for him. He understands what a big city is like on the East Coast, and he knows what East Coast traffic's like. He knows what East Coast people are like. This is not going to be like some stunning, shocking California kid walking in going like, oh my gosh, this winter in Boston is horrific. I can't believe I'm here. So I loved the fit from just his personality, his background, the way he'll come in and be part of the team. He understands his role really well. I loved all of it. And I was surprised to see him at 30 drop there. And then the shooting being such a key part. You know, it's weird because the NBA is now so obsessed with the 3-point shot, and I am too. I think it's tremendous. But I also like the fact that from a Boston standpoint, Boston's stretching things out, but they're still attacking the rim, and they're still looking to protect the rim as well, which is what I think makes Boston different than some other teams that are just jacking threes like crazy and say, all right, we're going to go like Indiana, we're going to go up tempo and shoot 1,000 threes, and they're not going to play defense, and they're not going to go to the rim and not go into the paint. So it's a really cool juxtaposition to look at Boston as being like a little bit old school, but also very much heavily into the analytics and into shots. Creighton runs this way. As you mentioned, watching the tape, they run high screen, high pick and roll, pick and pop all game long. That's their style. And if you can't come off a screen, you can't play for Greg McDermott. And if you can't hit a three off of a screen, you really can't play for Doug McDermott. So him and Scheierman are really tight. They've worked a ton. The strength coach for the Celtics really keyed in on his core strength and just making him a tougher guy to get off his spot. And he really worked on that all of last year. And that is a huge advancement for him because he's now really strong, bottom core, bottom half of him is really going to be a fun thing to watch him develop and grow into an NBA player.
I want to go back to the rebounding because I think that it just really in this situation, we'll see how it translates. Like shooting translates, if they get him open shots and the way that Mazzulla runs that offense, he'll get open looks. And it's just a translatable skill. Shooters can shoot, bottom line, doesn't matter what level you're at. The rebounding, of course, we'll see because, he was going up against big kids, but now he's going up against big men when he gets to the NBA. And also we don't know how he's going to be used. How much is he going to be down low? He played a lot of power forward in college, even though he's listed as a shooting guard, played a lot of power forward. He's a wing. So how much is he going to be used down low on those nights that Porzingis isn't available yet? Maybe Kornet doesn't come back. Horford's not playing back-to-backs. Like it's entirely possible. Obviously he gets some run in the middle, but I'm wondering if Mazzulla is going to, I just think you brought this up, Matt. I think that he's sort of a fun new toy. You can use him in a lot of different ways that are sort of unique to his ability, his size, I'm not going to say he's a unicorn in the way that Porzingis is, obviously, but there just aren't a lot of wings in the NBA that we talk about their rebounding ability. It's more about, the 3-and-D kind of mentality. And I feel like the way that he could be used in theory to supplement the loss of Porzingis is really interesting, depending on what they do as far as the bigs.
It's the defensive rebounding that I think attracts teams to him. So this is a kid who took his small school to a Nebraska football championship in 2018. Seems like a long time ago, but he was a quarterback and he has that football mentality. He doesn't go after the offensive glass all that much, but he is a really good rebounder on the defensive end of the ball, for the floor. So he will crash the glass defensively and he will help. That's where he isn't the greatest defender, but he makes up for it for his ability to get after loose basketballs and just out hustle people to get to the spot, to get to the ball. So I really like that from a Celtics perspective because Hauser had a couple of really big rebounds in the finals where he was sticking his nose in there. And even though he's not the greatest defender, It's an awesome guy for Scheierman to learn the offense from and go after the defensive glass and make yourself some money that way, as being a player that you don't care about contact. You don't care if it's a 7-foot center that's going to push you around. You'll go up there and try to get the basketball out of him and then outlet the ball and let the athletes go out to the rim. So that, I think, is a huge component. I don't think you'll see him on the offensive glass all that much, but I definitely see him being a big weapon defensively for Boston on the rebounding side.
So I've mentioned several times, Porzingis is going to miss time, obviously. And again, I just wouldn't be surprised if this stretches out. I think you can pretty much lock in that he is going to miss half of next year. Doesn't mean in general all up front. He's just, once he comes back, there are going to be nights that he misses, obviously, whether a re-aggravation of an injury, a new injury, or just off nights, whatever it is. I think if he plays 40 regular season games, you would consider that a victory coming off of this surgery that he is. And then we'll see what the playoffs look like. I guess my biggest question with this, though, and I want both of your perspectives, is does it matter? You know, there are a lot of people out there that still believe the Celtics would have gone out and won a championship rather easily last year if Porzingis was never even on the team. I'm not so sure that I'm in that camp. I think he was, really the best version of what you could have possibly hoped when they acquired him throughout the regular season. And many moments in the playoffs, especially that game 1 against Dallas, to really kind of set the tone for the series. He was exceptional when people didn't know what the hell he was going to look like after not having played in 5 weeks. So I still am of the belief that Porzingis is more important than he is just a luxury. But that being said, as the team goes out and looks to defend its title, knowing that the basketball really isn't going to stop, right? The Olympics are right around the corner. The Celtics have a game in Dubai to begin the preseason. You know, Tatum is continuing to play. Holiday is continuing to play, possibly White, possibly Brown. We'll see what injury replacements or whatever else look like as far as Team USA. But a lot of these guys are not going to get a break, rolling from that season celebration into the next. So the lack of Porzingis puts that much more pressure on some of these guys to perform early. Does it matter? Matt, go ahead.
Yes, it matters how much he plays to me. It matters from the minutes perspective. Like look, we've had 6 titles in 6 different teams in 6 years. Okay. There's a reason for that in the NBA. Parity is here. It is hard to repeat. It's hard to go and play deep into June, turn around, wait a month and a half or 2, get a little bit of rest and rehab, and then get back after it and get ready for training camp and then go into the season. The Olympics is the real big curveball here. And I think every Celtics fan has to at least acknowledge the fact that these guys are going to play so much basketball that there probably is going to be a rocky start to next season. And you kind of just say, I'm with you on the 25 thing. Like you tell KP, I'll see you in January. Like just get yourself ready for 25. Don't worry about the rest of this year. Let's figure out what happens, because when you're on the floor, you're a massive difference maker. I think they still win the championship even without Porzingis, but it's not nearly as easy. It's not as simple, as smooth, as quick. And it's not as they don't dispatch the Dallas Mavericks in 5. It takes more time. I do think they would have won it anyway, but I am of the belief, and I think you seem to be too, that Porzingis is such a weapon that you have to have him ready for the playoffs. Like the regular season, whatever it might be. I'm not saying flush the whole thing, but this is about repeating, and repeating comes to the tournament. So get into the tournament and then have Porzingis available. So until then, I don't need to see him at all. If he plays 40 games, that's great. Plays 25 games to get in shape to be ready to go for the playoffs. Awesome. To me, it's all about the playoffs.
And it comes back to seeding, kind of. Do they really want to go after it, get the number 1 seed? Look at it this year. One of the things I loved was how they used rest down the end of the year to get guys ready to go. I mean, they had it locked up. They had
a 27-game lead on the rest of the NBA.
They had it locked up pretty early. So like March, like a lot of people are like, oh, they had a couple of losses at the end. I mean, I don't really care about that, man. They're just trying to get rested up for the playoffs and make sure everybody's healthy. I don't really care as much about seeding this year. I don't think, because this is a team that proved last year and have proven over time, with this core, that they can win on the road. That's not going to be a problem. You almost sometimes prefer, especially against like Miami, that they play Miami on the road, because they seem to play much better there than they do at home when they play Miami. But it's just not a team that should be afraid of going on the road. It is all about just making sure everybody is healthy. And, would they have won the title this year if they didn't have Porzingis? I'm not going to sit here and say they would have. I think it's possible. And the fact that it's possible is insane. That if without this, however you want to call it, their third best player. They could have won the title. Their third best player. That's pretty impressive. But he definitely makes life a lot easier, and I would prefer to have him on the floor than not. So whatever you got to do, I think we're all in agreement on that. Like whatever you got to do to get him ready to rock and roll for the season, to make sure he's playing in April, May, and June, just do that. I mean, it doesn't, because the Eastern Conference is not a juggernaut. It's not, there's not a cajillion teams that are lining up to compete with you. The Knicks made a nice move. I think that's going to be fun. It's going to make the conference more interesting. I think Indiana is gonna be a little more successful this year because they have a clear identity and Pascal clearly helped them. There's going to be some team that we don't know about. It's going to be pretty okay. I think Orlando, that's going to be a fun team to see what they do. Cleveland, and obviously Giannis is going to be there. But it's not like the West where there's a litany of good teams waiting for you to get hurt. You look at the West and the Lakers and Warriors have to fight and scrap to make the play-in game, and they have LeBron, AD, Curry, and Boston's going to make the playoffs. We're not worried about that. It's what do they look like when they get there? And as long as everybody's healthy, you have to consider them the favorite to go to the finals. So again, whatever they got to do to get him ready to go, wrap him in bubble wrap. Who cares? The best part is, and I'm knocking on wood as I say this, the main guys are all very durable guys. Like, and I always get worried about Tatum playing too much basketball. But that hasn't seemed to matter at all in his career. So at some point, I'm going to say it. I'm wrong about this. Tatum knows his body better than I do. If he wants to play in the Olympics and be a big part of this thing, I'm not going to stop him. He'll get ready. I'm not worried about Jalen. I'm not worried about Drew Holiday. I'm not worried about Derek White. We're good. So if there's a couple of ancillary guys, and KP being one of them, who takes some time to get healthy, and if they want to rest Al, which they should, obviously that was huge this season. I'm fine with it. Just get them to May and June, and we're square. We're good.
PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy app with over 5 million active members. It is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. Get in on the daily action with your friends. Become part of the PrizePicks community today. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 players, their stat projections, and watch the winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. You could turn $10 into $1,000. PrizePicks is available in more than 30 states across the country, including California, Texas, and Georgia. Now, here's something that you can think about. What you can think about here with PrizePicks, here's an example of something you could. This is the whole idea behind the concept. Caitlin Clark for more than 3.5 three-pointers made, and Brianna Stewart for more than 23 points. See, it's that simple. Download the PrizePicks app today and use the code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code CLNS on PrizePicks for a deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy.
So I don't spend a lot of time paying attention to what the national pundits are saying about the NBA, because I think, we all know that the era we live in, it's all hot takes and who can scream the loudest and clickbait and all of that. And it was borderline impressive how everyone talked themselves into all the reasons the Mavericks were going to just destroy the Celtics in the NBA Finals. But where I will give all of these people credit now is that I haven't, at least what I've heard, and maybe I missed it, you guys can tell me, I haven't heard a lot of people, really anyone, talking themselves into why the Celtics should not be the favorites going into next year. People are giving them the respect that they've earned, that they deserve. And, we'll
now,
say,
Adam, right now, remember it's
right
June.
now,
When we get to October, you're going to hear all the negative, they can't, all of this.
As we sit here now, free agency does begin tomorrow. Who knows?
In the wake of the parade, they got to be careful. They can't say what they really want to say until they get to October and people forget, and then they can rip the Celtics because it's coming. They're going to talk about.
I kind of felt like I was waiting for Stephen A. Smith after the Knicks trade to be like, and this is why the Knicks, the Villanova Knicks, are going to be, win the national championship or win.
Adam, people have told me the Knicks are coming. Here come the Knicks, Matt. You nervous? Here come the Knicks. I'm like, are you serious? What am I nervous about? Like, are you serious? Like, they're waiting for it.
Look, I think the Knicks are going to be good. I do believe, maybe I'm on an island here. Certainly in some of our text threads, I've felt like I'm on an island. I think this, if the Knicks were healthy last year, which they were so far from, I think they would have given the Celtics a good fight in the playoffs. I think they would have given them a much better series than the Pacers did or that the Mavericks did. Because they're gritty, they're scrappy, they play hard. Tibbs runs those guys into the ground, obviously. And look, I like Bridges. I think it's a good ad. Bringing back Anunoby, no doubt about it. Hartenstein, you're probably going to lose. You can afford it. If everybody comes back, I think that team is good. But it's not obviously title favorite good. It seems a little crazy that they're they got the third best odds right now, and there's no value in that number, even at plus, I don't know, 750 or 700 or whatever it was when I was looking at it a couple of days ago. It's Boston, Denver, who has been making some changes here. Knicks, Thunder. I still don't think the Thunder are getting enough respect. I mean, that you want to talk about a team that's coming. OKC is absolutely coming. Agreed. But I just the Knicks to me are more they to me are, it's not totally fair to compare them to like when the Nets went out and acquired an aging Pierce and Garnett and gave out all those picks, because the Knicks are still relatively young. But I think what they have done to make themselves very competitive these next couple of years have also mortgaged their future for, possibly a decade. I think what they are doing right now is dangerous. And, for the sake of Knicks fans, hey, hope it works out for you and that you get a couple of deep playoff runs. But pretty much if you don't win a championship now, you have failed.
And I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on this team because now you've talked about the odds. People are betting on them. People think that they're going to be good. This is a fan base that can be very fickle and very quick to flip on you if you don't get off to a really good start. So look, you can give me the New York Knicks know for the limit that they're not winning the championship next year. I do not agree with it. I do not see it. I think they're going to be good. It's a good word. They're going to be good, but they're not elite. They're not a title contender to me. They're not a top 5 title contender to me, odds wise. I would not put them. I can come up with 5 teams real quick that I would put above them. And maybe this experiment works. You're right. The Bridges addition is a really nice addition, but they're not better. I mean, look, it's still Giannis in the Bucks. That's still who I look at. And let's see what happens with Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat and what they do. But like, those are the 2 teams. My eye goes there. Who is competing for the Celtics that they got to worry about? Those are the 2 teams I start with every single time. It's not the Knicks. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm disrespecting and overlooking. But right now, I'm not worried about the Knicks knocking off the Celtics.
I'll be disrespectful. You've got way more respect for the Bucks than I have. Giannis is one of the greatest players in the world, and Dame individually is too. I don't think those guys are a good fit together, and I think Doc is absolutely the wrong coach for that team.
We'll see how long that goes, right? I mean, it was not a good experiment. They fired a guy who I still can't believe this.
He was Dave 30-12 or something.
Dave Sharp and I talk about this all the time, that the Bucks fired a guy who was 30-13 on the year to bring in Doc Rivers. Like how do you even justify that? Like, we all make fun of the Bronny, the Lakers taking Bronny at 55. Happiest guy in the world is Giannis, because we're forgetting that he ran a coach out that was 30-13.
It's comical. I mean, look, the Knicks thing, the one thing I'll say about the Knicks is, this is it. Like, this is it. They're all in here. And the pressure that comes with, because trust me, the 3 of us, we participated in the nonsense and the dialogue of, the Celtics better win it this year, because if they don't, holy moly, right?
Yep.
That's the consequence of, I think, what the Knicks did that a lot of people aren't really realizing yet. The Isaiah Hartenstein thing, by the way, if Oklahoma City gets him, which is the rumor, first off, I agree with both of you. I would take the OKC number right now, because if they get Isaiah Hartenstein, it's going to go way up. But that's a big part of why they were successful in the playoffs. I don't think, if people actually watch the Knicks, because they lost Mitch Robinson, they lost their big guy inside, and they're playing Precious Achiuwa to try and make up for it. But they couldn't, because they had to play Hartenstein a ton because they just couldn't survive the minutes that Achiuwa was out there. If they lose Hartenstein and they have Mitch Robinson there as their primary big, they're going to be in some trouble if he gets hurt, and he gets hurt all the time. And especially with the Celtics team, like, they're big. Like, everybody's big except for Peyton Pritchard. He's the only guy that's not big. So you better be able to rebound. Now, the Knicks do. But again, you got to be able to control the glass, control tempo, control pace, because if Boston does so, you're in trouble. Even if they don't. Like, the Pacers controlled the pace of that series, and Boston won all 4 games.
And my problem, Evan, with people who were knocking on Jason Tatum in the playoffs, and really is why I think Tatum should have won the MVP over Brown, and Brown was great. People have really slept on the idea that Boston was able to use a 6'11 guard on the wing to stop any pick and roll action that was happening and any lob to the basket that was being done by the Dallas Mavericks. Like, people, I think, sleep on the Celtics defensively because they've got Jalen and Jason, and they've got these two weapons to go attack you on the wing. But on the defensive end, I think people are just either ignorant to it or don't like watching it or don't like what Boston does defensively, because it's so tough to play against the Celtics when you have pterodactyls on the wing with this gigantic wingspan. As you mentioned, they're not just tall, they're extremely long. Porzingis, Brown, Tatum, they are a really tough team to play defensively, and they can do so many different things defensively to shut teams down, which makes it much more complicated, I think, for teams in the East, because you got to figure out how to score on Boston, which sometimes the Knicks can go silent offensively. It's why Philly can't do it, because Al Horford takes away Embiid. And then what are you left with? A couple of wings? Well, Boston can handle the wings. They're not afraid of Maxey and company. They can take care of them. So this team is built for the long term. And if I'm the Eastern Conference, I got to figure out how I'm going to score on Boston, let alone stopping Boston's offense.
So in the final few minutes that we've got, you mentioned Bronny James, and I want to talk about him for a minute, because I'm gonna say a lot of different things. I know I tend to ramble, but I'm gonna say a lot of different things, and I'm gonna talk out of both sides of my mouth. I will readily admit that. I will start with this. I love the story, and I have loved the story for years. I have been talking about LeBron playing with his kid for 6 years. I probably started tweeting about it. So I have been looking forward to this. I am all about Bronny being a Laker, and genuinely, I hope he is decent. I hope, his defense is enough to get him some minutes on the floor. We know offensively he sucks, so I hope defensively he can get out there and play a little bit and share the floor with his dad. I grew up, as did you, Matt. Ev, you were a little behind us in like Ken Griffey Jr., like anyone else at my age, was my favorite player in the world. I have a signed bat of his right over my shoulder here. And, watching him in the late 80s, early 90s play with his dad there with Seattle was like just the best story ever. Like, that's the fantasy, man. And we have never seen this in NBA history. So I think it's so cool. I have no issue whatsoever with, like, it didn't even occur to me, the whole like nepotism thing. People start tweeting about nepotism and spending time on TV talking about nepotism. It didn't even enter my brain, because it was just such a foregone conclusion that these two guys were going to play together. And honestly, to talk about nepotism here would be such a remarkable sports double standard, that has existed for like as long as time, right? Like Belichick with his kids on the coaching staff, and like how does
how about Austin Haynes?
Sure. I mean, Austin getting his opportunity there in Boston. I'm sure Dad had a lot to do with that. There are 1,000 examples of this. Why is the freaking Niners coach escaping my brain right now?
Shanahan, Kyle.
Shanahan, yeah, like Shanahan. His dad had nothing to do with his
right,
progress.
Mike, yep.
Like, and I mean, you see it throughout football, and not like there's, I mean, hell, like in broadcasting. I mean, Noah Eagle is incredible. He was a classmate of yours, wasn't he? Ever was he behind you? Noah's incredible, but like
much younger. Thank you, though.
Whatever. Is he definitely in the NBA? If not for Ian, I have no idea, and he's genuinely good. Hell, Sean McDonough, who is like the best broadcaster on the freaking planet, does he get the an MLB job at 25, if not for Will McDonough? Who the hell knows? That's not for me to say. My point is, like, this stuff has been around forever. I don't care about the nepotism angle at all. What I do kind of care about, though, is, if this makes sense, league-wide nepotism. For all of the teams to stand out of the Lakers' way and just be like, no, we'll just let Bronny fall to you. Now, obviously, that doesn't happen if Bronny is any good.
And he's not.
And he's not. Like,
he's not.
He's not even drafted, if not for LeBron. He probably doesn't even enter the draft. He's back in college, if not for LeBron. If not for, being LeBron James Jr., this is not a kid that we would even know about. So, right. Like Bryce might actually be able to play LeBron's next kid, but, we'll find out over the course of time, obviously. But even still, for a team, and I'm looking at you, Boston, to not want to mess with the Lakers at least a little bit. And I realize you could say, He's not a player. What's the point? Waste of a draft pick. Let's get, this Anton Watson, who might be another, not on the level of Scheierman, but another rotational player who could come in. He's experienced. He's another 24-year-old kid or whatever age he is. I get it, but, and I'm far from the first person to say this, but you're going to tell me with the Celtics at 54 and the Lakers, who they're going to pick at 55, Red Auerbach doesn't take Bronny James.
He does
13 times out of 7.
Yes.
Of course he does. Just to do it, just to have a freaking chuckle about it and to say, we'll give him to you, give us 3 second-round picks in return. Just to do it, that part does kind of bug me a little bit. If the Celtics were at 42, fine. Okay. But when you've got the pick right before the pick, just take him, just to screw with him. That level of respect for LeBron and for we want to see the Disney story come to life. That part kind of bugs me.
I hear you, but I don't think they actually did. I think they did it. I think they did not draft him because it wasn't even worth it. It wasn't worth the headache. It wasn't worth it because Bronny James is not an NBA player. And Bronny James is a 6'1" guard who, if his name was John Smith, would be still on the bench at USC, not playing basketball for the Trojans, who were an under 500 Pac-12 basketball team. He couldn't break into the rotation of that team, and that team wasn't any good. So I think Boston's you know what? You can have him. I think the whole league was you know what? You can have him. I don't really know if Rich Paul really was calling teams saying, if you draft him, I'm taking him to Australia. I don't know if that was true or that was just a plant to make it seem like Rich Paul's got more power than he does. But the whole thing was hysterically funny because this kid's going to get a 2nd-round pick contract. He doesn't need to play at all, but he's LeBron's kid. They're not cutting him. So he's on the roster. He's taking a roster spot from somebody that might actually help the LA Lakers. If he plays, I cannot wait to watch him in Summer League. I'm coming back from New England right on the 14th or so. And I'm going to be right down to Thomas and Mack to watch Bronny James. I want to see this kid play in NBA style basketball. Maybe I'm dead wrong. Maybe he can play. But from what I saw in college, offensively, he can't shoot. Defensively, he's tiny. I mean, we talked about the length and size of Boston. He's going to guard Jason Tatum. He's 6'1". Tatum 6'11". Have fun. He's tiny for a basketball player, and he can't shoot like Pritchard. So what role is he filling for an NBA roster other than his dad is the best player in the league?
Well, I'll tell you, this story, I don't really care too much about it. I think it's cool. I think it's weird we're talking about nepotism in the NBA. I don't really care. It doesn't bother me at all. LeBron has made the Lakers enough money to the point
right.
where, they probably owe him one. Sure. Totally get it. Totally fine with it. The one thing I will say is I am happy he's staying in LA because, he did have that health scare not too long ago, and his doctors are all already there. So having him there, I think is great for him just from a health standpoint. I think it's really important. I don't care if he plays. I think it's a cool story like Ken Griffey Sr., Ken Griffey Jr. I think it's great.
Ken Griffey Jr. could play.
I know.
Well, Ken Griffey Jr. was the number 1 prospect in all of baseball. And his dad was
this is something.
Player.
It's not apples to apples, but I spent a lot of time talking to Greg about Doug, about how to coach Doug and what it was like to bring in Doug. And Greg said he talked to a lot of other coaches that coached their sons, and they all said to a T, either he's the water boy and he never plays, or he better be the best player in the entire team. Because either if he's in the middle, it's going to be problematic because you're going to go, everyone's going to question, well, you're the son of the coach. Of course, you're going to play. Of course, you're going to start. Of course, you're going to get these shots and whatnot. If you're the best player, there's never any question. Maybe Bronny's so bad that there's not even a question that he'll never play and there's no questions asked at all. But if he plays real minutes because his dad wants to play with his son, that could be a locker room problem for the Lakers.
I mean, hell, Kaufman, we come from Syracuse, and Buddy and Jim Jr. both got minutes for Syracuse. Yeah. Now, Buddy was good.
He was good.
Buddy was good.
Got to be able to play. If your dad or nepotism is involved in some form or fashion, you want to quiet down the whispers, you better be able to play. And when I saw Bronny James play at USC, at no point did I was like, yep, that guy's going to play in the NBA next year. There wasn't even a question.
I do want to circle funny. I want to circle back for a second, just because I don't want this to go without me following up here. You said you talked to Craig McDermott after the draft pick was made. He said it was a dream scenario for them.
Yep.
Was there any back and forth with this conversation about how maybe, Boston might use him or how, because I know he had a workout with Boston the previous year. I think Brad talked about this, that they had him in for a workout last year and that they told him to go back to school and get stronger. And then that's what he did. And now here he is, a Boston Celtic. I was just wondering if there's anything else that maybe has transpired in the chat.
Not night of, because it was late in Omaha when I was texting. I'm on the West Coast, so it was easier time for me. But during the interview before he was drafted, before the Celtics took him, I mentioned I had Greg on the show, and I asked him what was Ryan Kalkbrenner, who's going to be the kid that everyone will talk about. He's the next Zach Edey type. He's a 7-footer. He's the 2-time Defensive Player of the Year for the Big East. He tested the waters. He heard back from the teams that we don't think you're ready for the NBA. You got to go back to school for one more year. This is the last COVID year, extra bonus year these kids are going to get. So go back and use that. And they took the Baylor Scheierman literal blueprint about what Baylor did after he heard similar things from teams like the Celtics to go and work, because Baylor didn't like what he heard and he didn't like what teams were telling him. And he didn't want to go there and be playing in, Austria or playing in France after, not making an NBA roster. So it was all about working hard on your strength and your quickness and working on your shot. He shot 38, 39% from behind the arc. He took deep threes. The problem with hearing that from the NBA, and we'll see what Kalkbrenner does for Creighton this coming year, is that he was told to keep showing your range. And so if you watch the tape, he'll take threes from anywhere on the court. Like he was shooting logo threes in Madison Square Garden. And that always wasn't the best thing for the Creighton basketball program, but he was trying to justify his range, saying I can hit shots from anywhere, and he's fearless. And so the thing I like about him going to Boston, like he won't stop shooting. Like if he's cold to start and teams are either letting him shoot or the fans are on him, he won't care. He's a very confident young man. He comes from a really good family, hardworking kid. So I think that's, from the Celtics standpoint, you're getting a guy who's not going to be wavering on his talents if things don't get off to a great start for him, because it is the NBA and he is playing for the defending champs.
Well, if you listen to the show and feel like you didn't learn anything about Baylor Scheierman, then I would encourage you to listen to the show again because you weren't paying attention. We gave you a lot there, in particular, Matt Perrault here gave you a lot. Check out the Bostonian versus the book. I can't believe you didn't show up wearing a BBB hat and brand the thing, but that's okay. There we go. It's right there. It got him handy. Not as many in the collection as Sheriff, but you got.
I've got 10. So we got this is my daughter's model. This is Madeline, my 10-year-old's designs. So this is her model of the BBB hat.
Tack on a 0, and that's how many Dave has, right?
True. Yeah, I think he has 50. So yeah, he's got a lot.
That's every color in the. It's like the what do they call them with I'm not a sneakerhead. What do they call the sneaker different color schemes? The
colorways.
Colorways, yeah. Makes sense. Dave's got all the colorways.
No, this is for all my Andover people. So this is the hometown.
Matt Perrault, get him on Twitter at Sports Talk Matt. Again, a wealth of knowledge about college hoops and beyond. Obviously knows his Boston Celtics and his Creighton Blue Jays as well, and direct line to Greg McDermott, which is always a nice thing as well. For Evan Valenti, I'm Adam Kaufman. We'll be back. More updates on the Celtics next week. Let you know what's going on. Summer League will be right around the corner, and rate, review, subscribe, all that good stuff. Thanks for listening. If you're checking out the audio, watching, if you're on the CLNS Media YouTube page, we will catch you again soon.